Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. When the truth refuses to hide, even shadows start confessing. That's exactly what happened in your story, whether you realized it or not. Long before you learned anything was going on, people were being pulled aside, names were being written down, and your character was being dissected like a headline case. And the strangest part? Everyone who opened their mouth said the exact same thing about you. No cracks, no contradictions, no hidden scandals, just a clean, consistent truth that made the entire investigation feel like a plot twist nobody was prepared for. Here's a fact most people don't know. Human beings change their behavior depending on who's watching. Up to 70% of our actions shift based on environment and audience. But you broke that statistic without even trying. They checked you from every angle: work, home, past friendships, old situations, quiet moments, loud moments. And still, your story lined up like it had been written with a ruler. If anything, the investigation revealed that they were more unpredictable than you. It got to the point where even the investigators started giving each other that look, like, hold on, are we sure we're investigating the right person? Because every witness they spoke to made them feel like they were the ones that needed evaluation. Your character wasn't just intact, it was annoyingly intact. The kind of intact that makes people suspicious simply because it's so rare. And let's be honest, the whole thing is a little funny. They went digging for dirt and ended up finding their own reflection. They tried to expose you and accidentally exposed their own assumptions. They wanted a scandal, but the only plot twist was how shockingly unscandalous you turned out to be. So now we're diving into what really happened, why the investigation was launched, what they expected to find, and the uncomfortable truth that echoed from every single witness. You are exactly who you said you were. And that alone was enough to unsettle everyone who built their confidence on the hope that you weren't. Number one, they discovered you never needed a mask because you didn't have a second face to hide behind. When they went through every corner of your life, they came in expecting drama, lies, hidden agendas, or at least a small crack in your character. What they found instead was almost disorienting for them: consistency. You were the same person in every room, every conversation, every encounter. No pretenses, no facades, no performances to fit in or impress. That kind of presence is rare because most people are juggling at least two versions of themselves, the one they show the world and the one they hope no one ever sees. But you had only one, and it was undeniable. Witnesses confirmed the same thing over and over. You never acted differently depending on who was watching. You weren't quiet around some people and loud around others. You weren't generous with some and stingy with others. Every interaction, every response, every decision came from a place of authenticity. That scared them because authenticity cannot be manipulated or bent to someone else's agenda. It cannot be bribed with praise, guilt, or threats. You didn't need validation to prove your worth, and that makes people who rely on manipulation feel powerless. They expected to find vulnerability, but instead, they found transparency that doesn't waver. Your consistency wasn't boring. It was unshakable. Every witness they spoke to, whether friend, colleague, or casual observer, pointed to the same undeniable truth. You are exactly who you appear to be. That realization is terrifying to anyone who assumed they could predict or control you. It's unsettling because it strips them of leverage and leaves them exposed. By the time the investigation was over, it became clear that the biggest revelation wasn't about what they thought they would find. It was about the impossible normality of you. You never hid, never played a role, never bent for the sake of appearances. That truth is a kind of quiet power, one they can't touch, can't distort, and certainly can't imitate. It's rare, it's humbling, and for them, It's unsettling in a way they didn't anticipate. Number 2, every witness confirmed you didn't collapse under pressure. You became clearer, sharper, and more accurate. The moment they thought they had you cornered, it became obvious that cornering you was impossible. Pressure, scrutiny, and relentless observation were meant to expose weaknesses, to make you falter, to create hesitation or cracks in your composure. But every witness they spoke to said the exact opposite. Under stress, you didn't crumble. You became more focused. The harder the circumstances, the sharper your mind worked. Decisions weren't rushed or emotional. They were precise, deliberate, and almost surgical. This isn't something most people understand. Most people break, stumble, or overcomplicate under pressure, but you operate differently. It's not luck, it's clarity under fire, and that clarity made everyone watching uneasy without them even realizing why. Witnesses described a pattern they couldn't ignore. They saw you confronted with challenges, contradictions, or even outright lies, and instead of reacting emotionally, you analyzed, assessed, and responded with accuracy that left observers unsettled. Your calm wasn't passive. Your composure wasn't fragile. It was a demonstration that pressure doesn't make you falter. It makes you operate at a level others can't reach when their own nerves are fraying. That's a kind of strength that feels almost unfair to people who thrive on chaos or manipulation because it undermines their entire plan. They expected stress to shake you, to make you say something they could use against you, to reveal a flaw they could exploit. Instead, the investigation revealed the opposite. You didn't just survive pressure, you refined yourself under it. Your clarity exposed their impatience, their overreactions, and their miscalculations. Witnesses couldn't stop noting it. Every account painted the same picture. You weren't vulnerable, you weren't weak, and you certainly weren't ordinary. By the end of it, the truth became undeniable. The more they pressed, the more you stood unshakable, not with arrogance, but with precision. Pressure didn't break you, it elevated you, and that revelation alone is something they will never forget. Number 3, they learned you weren't unbothered. You were simply unavailable to manipulation. From the moment they started observing you, they assumed your calm was a weakness. They thought your silence meant you were scared, indifferent, or hiding something. What they didn't realize was that your composure wasn't a passive reaction. It was a deliberate shield, a boundary that made you untouchable in ways they couldn't understand. Witness after witness confirmed the same thing. You weren't unbothered because you didn't care. You were unavailable because you had already decided what mattered and what didn't. That distinction made all the difference, and it terrified them more than any outburst ever could. Every interaction they monitored, every attempt to provoke or control you, ended the same way. You didn't engage with the nonsense. You didn't justify yourself. You didn't lower yourself to explain or defend. Instead, you simply removed their power to affect you. Witnesses consistently described a level of emotional independence that isn't just rare, it's disarming. People who rely on manipulation cannot handle someone who cannot be influenced, persuaded, or shaken. Your unavailability is what they mistook for unbothered, but in truth, it's a choice rooted in foresight, wisdom, and self-possession. They came in expecting to find cracks, but the investigation revealed a wall they couldn't scale. Attempts to bait you, trap you, or corner you all failed, not because you were indifferent, but because you had already structured your life in a way that left no opening. Every witness who observed your behavior noticed it. They saw someone who isn't reactive, who doesn't give their energy to chaos, who decides where attention is worth giving and where it isn't. That kind of emotional sovereignty is intimidating because it's impossible to coerce or control. By the end of the investigation, the truth became glaringly obvious. You weren't simply calm, distant, or aloof. You were strategically unavailable. Your mental space, your energy, and your focus were not for the taking, and that realization left everyone who tried to meddle with you both confused and powerless. For them, it was a revelation they weren't ready to face. Number 4, they found out your boundaries weren't reactions. They were principles you lived by long before they appeared. One of the most striking revelations from the investigation was that your boundaries were not born out of fear, anger, or a sudden need to protect yourself. Witness after witness confirmed the same thing. Your limits were pre-established, rooted in your values, and maintained consistently over time. They were principles, not reactions. Every attempt they made to test you, to push past your lines, or to catch you off guard, ended up exposing their own impatience, their own overreach. They assumed boundaries were flexible, something to be challenged or bent. They were wrong. Your boundaries were the framework of who you are, and no investigation could change that. The witnesses didn't describe you as defensive. They described you as deliberate. You didn't flinch when someone crossed a line because you didn't operate on impulse. You operated on standards you had set long before any conflict, long before any scrutiny. That consistency threw everyone off. People expect boundaries to be situational, dependent on context or convenience. But your limits were anchored in integrity. They weren't a shield thrown up in the heat of the moment. They were the backbone of your life, guiding your choices, interactions, and decisions with unshakable clarity. Every detail of your life they examined confirmed this. From friendships to professional interactions, from casual encounters to high-stress moments, the same pattern repeated itself. Witnesses noted that you didn't adjust your values to appease someone, didn't compromise your principles to avoid conflict, and didn't bend under pressure just to fit in. That revelation was alarming to them because it showed that the power they assumed they held over you was an illusion. Your boundaries weren't negotiable because they weren't arbitrary. They were the product of a life carefully built on self-respect, foresight, and discipline. By the end of their investigation, the truth was undeniable. Your limits weren't reactive measures. They were timeless truths you lived by. They exposed how predictable and consistent you were in your ethics, and that realization was far more unsettling than anything they could have anticipated. They weren't dealing with someone who could be swayed. They were dealing with someone whose life had already been mapped by unshakable principles. Number 5, they realized you never retaliated because you didn't need revenge to define your value. The investigation uncovered a truth that left them quietly unsettled. No matter the provocations, no matter the lies or attacks, you never struck back. Witnesses all said the same thing. Where most people would have lashed out, argued, or tried to reclaim power, you remained steadfast, unaffected in the ways that mattered. That kind of restraint isn't born from fear or indecision. It's born from clarity. You understood that your worth isn't measured by someone else's judgment or the grudges they hope to provoke. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone because your value exists independently of their perception. They had expected retaliation. They had anticipated scandal, confrontation, or at least visible frustration that could be twisted and weaponized. What they found instead was a level of composure that disarmed them entirely. Witnesses noted that your silence in response wasn't passive, it was a statement. You weren't weak or unengaged. You simply knew that responding on their terms would validate their drama, and that was a power you refused to hand over. Every calculated insult, every attempt at provocation was met with a kind of unshakable poise that made them question their own tactics. The absence of revenge revealed something even more striking. You move forward without dragging the past behind you. You don't store grudges or replay confrontations in your mind to feed anger or resentment. Instead, You preserve your energy for what matters and leave their schemes as what they are, irrelevant noise. Witnesses described a consistency in your behavior that made it obvious. Revenge isn't part of your vocabulary because it doesn't need to be. Your life, your decisions, and your success are already enough evidence of who you are, and you don't need to prove it through conflict. By the time the investigation concluded, they couldn't deny it. Your lack of retaliation wasn't apathy, it was superiority in the truest sense. You don't define yourself through reactions to others. You define yourself by your own integrity, your own choices, and your own forward motion. That realization unsettled everyone who expected drama, and it revealed that the power they thought they had over you was never real. Number 6, they discovered that people who disliked you still respected you. One of the most striking revelations from the investigation was how unanimous this observation was. Even those who openly disliked or disagreed with you admitted to a deep respect for who you are. Witness after witness confirmed it. It wasn't respect born from fear, obligation, or politeness. It was genuine acknowledgement of your integrity, intelligence, and unwavering principles. This is rare because respect and affection don't always go hand in hand, but your consistency forced even your critics to recognize the truth. That made the investigators and everyone involved uncomfortable, because it's not easy to manipulate, intimidate, or discredit someone when everyone, even detractors, is aligned in their perception of your character. They went in expecting contradictions, expecting enemies to create chaos in your narrative. Instead, what they found was almost paradoxical. The very people who had reasons to speak against you couldn't fabricate anything substantial. Their complaints existed, but they had limits. They had to acknowledge your clarity, your honesty, and your fairness. Witnesses repeatedly pointed out that your behavior never depended on approval or popularity. You didn't twist yourself to fit into social expectations, and you didn't compromise your principles for acceptance. That consistency left people with no ammunition, no leverage, and no way to undermine you. The investigation highlighted that respect isn't something you can demand. It's earned, whether people like you or not. They observed that your integrity was magnetic in ways that aren't always visible at first glance. Even those who disliked you were forced to admit it, because your actions aligned perfectly with your words, and your principles were evident in every decision you made. That alignment is rare enough to make someone remarkable, and rare enough to make those who misunderstand it feel unsettled. By the end of their investigation, the truth was undeniable. Your influence isn't rooted in charm or popularity. It's rooted in authenticity. Even critics couldn't escape acknowledging it. You created a space where respect is inevitable, and that alone shook everyone who assumed they could control the narrative. Your life, behavior, and choices left a mark that no dislike could erase. Number 7. They were shocked to learn you operate by internal truth, not external approval. The investigation revealed something that unsettled everyone involved. You don't live for applause, validation, or recognition. Witness after witness confirmed it. They expected to find someone swayed by opinions, someone who bent their behavior to fit the expectations of others, someone whose actions could be influenced by praise or criticism. What they found instead was almost unnerving, a person who moves according to an internal compass, guided by principles, clarity, and personal truth. Your decisions, your actions, and even the way you respond to challenges come from a place entirely independent of external judgment. That independence, subtle but powerful, makes you unpredictable in the eyes of those who rely on manipulation and influence to control outcomes. Every attempt to sway you failed because your framework isn't built on others' perceptions. Witnesses repeatedly noted that your life isn't performative. You don't adjust to fit in or gain approval. You aren't seeking to be liked. envied, or feared. That revelation unnerved the investigators because it removed the most common levers people use to control or predict behavior. When someone operates from external validation, every action, hesitation, and word is potentially exploitable. With you, there's nothing to exploit because your actions are aligned with an internal standard that is consistent and immovable. They were forced to confront the fact that influence over you doesn't exist in conventional ways. They tried charm, intimidation, gossip, and even misinformation, yet nothing shifted. Witnesses described your independence as magnetic, but also frustrating to those who thrive on manipulating narratives. That subtle power, the ability to remain guided by internal truth regardless of chaos around you, creates a kind of authority that cannot be challenged, only observed. By the conclusion of the investigation, the truth was undeniable. Your life is a reflection of your own principles, not the expectations of others. That alone is a revelation that leaves people uneasy. For those who rely on approval, manipulation, or perception to maintain control, discovering someone who moves entirely on internal truth is both a puzzle and a warning. You exist outside their influence, and that reality unsettles everyone who underestimated the quiet power of self-sovereignty. Number 8, they confirmed you don't gossip, you disconnect. One of the most striking patterns the investigation revealed was how completely untouchable you are when it comes to drama. Witnesses repeatedly pointed out that you don't spread rumors, don't twist stories, and don't feed into chaos. You don't get caught in the trap of petty narratives because you simply remove yourself from them. This wasn't seen as avoidance. It was recognized as deliberate, controlled, and almost surgical in execution. While everyone around you was caught in cycles of manipulation, half-truths, and emotional entanglements, you maintained a kind of quiet clarity that left observers baffled and, in many cases, unsettled. They expected to find someone reacting to situations, someone who might slip, someone whose words could be turned against them. Instead, they discovered a person who cannot be weaponized through conversation. Your communication isn't a tool for gossip, and that makes you immune to the most common form of social attack. Witnesses described you as someone who doesn't simply remain silent. They actively disconnect from toxic energy, disengage from petty conflicts, and maintain distance from people and situations that thrive on chaos. That kind of intentional disengagement feels almost unnatural to those who try to control or manipulate, because it removes the chaos they rely on for leverage. The investigation exposed a truth that no amount of scrutiny could hide. You don't participate in narratives that don't serve you, and that makes you invisible in a way that threatens people who depend on visibility to manipulate. You don't gossip because it's meaningless. You disconnect because clarity is valuable and wasted energy is dangerous. Every witness, from casual acquaintances to close colleagues, confirmed the same pattern. They noted that your absence from drama wasn't cold, it was strategic, ethical, and consistent. By the end of their review, it was undeniable. Your strength isn't just in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. The investigation made it clear that removing yourself from destructive cycles is a form of power they don't understand. You aren't just quiet. You're unassailable, untouchable, and entirely outside their reach. And that reality unsettled them far more than any conflict could. Number 9, they found out your silence isn't passive. It's a strategy that protects your future, not your pride. One of the most revealing truths uncovered during the investigation was the way you handle silence. Witnesses didn't describe you as withdrawn, timid, or indifferent. They described you as someone who speaks when it matters and remains silent when words would only create noise. Your silence isn't a default. It's intentional, precise, and strategic. It's a shield that preserves your energy, protects your integrity, and keeps your future untainted by the petty conflicts of the present. That realization left everyone involved quietly unsettled, because silence, when wielded as a strategy rather than a reaction, is more powerful than confrontation or manipulation ever could be. They expected that under scrutiny, pressure, or conflict, your words would betray you. They thought that staying quiet was a weakness they could exploit. Witnesses, however, told a different story. You don't stay silent to avoid responsibility or to hide mistakes. You stay silent to maintain control, to observe, and to let the truth unfold on its own. Every action, every word, and every moment you chose not to speak was a deliberate choice to protect yourself and your path. Your silence isn't about pride or ego, it's about foresight. It's about recognizing that not everything requires a response, that energy spent on reactions is energy stolen from progress. The investigation revealed a pattern that left observers unsettled. Even when they tried to provoke, mislead, or corner you, nothing broke your composure. Your silence acted like a mirror, reflecting their own tactics back at them. It made them realize that they couldn't manipulate, intimidate, or outmaneuver you through words, because your strategy isn't about them. It's about preserving the integrity of your life. Witnesses repeatedly emphasized how rare this kind of strategic restraint is, and how unsettling it can be to those who rely on impulsive reactions and manipulative drama. By the end of the investigation, it was clear your silence isn't weakness, it's armor. It isn't avoidance, it's strategy. It protects your future, safeguards your energy, and exposes the limitations of anyone who tries to challenge or provoke you. That truth alone left a mark no one involved could ignore. Number 10. They discovered you don't need a crowd to stand tall. You stand up even when no one is clapping. One of the most striking revelations from the investigation was how independent your strength really is. Witnesses repeatedly noted that your confidence and conviction never depended on approval, applause, or recognition from others. You don't perform for an audience. You don't measure your value by who notices, who cheers, or who validates your actions. You operate from a place of inner certainty, a kind of quiet assurance that doesn't need external confirmation. That realization unsettled the investigators, because it's rare to find someone whose power is entirely self-generated, unshakable, and consistent, regardless of who's watching. They expected that under scrutiny, isolation, or even criticism, you might falter. They thought that without support or recognition, your confidence could be shaken, or at least challenged. Witnesses told a different story. Even when facing situations where no one stood by you, where no one spoke up in your favor, you remained composed, deliberate, and unwavering. That level of internal stability is rare because most people rely on social feedback to navigate their confidence. You don't. You stand tall because you know your worth, your principles, and your purpose, independent of the external world. Every witness emphasized the same observation. Your independence isn't arrogance. It's integrity in motion. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible authority that forces people to acknowledge your presence and your value without you asking for it or demanding it. This was especially unsettling to those who thrive on influence, attention, and social leverage. They realized that all their attempts to destabilize you or control the narrative failed because your strength doesn't come from the crowd, it comes from within. By the end of the investigation, the truth was undeniable. Your power isn't performative, your confidence isn't borrowed, and your actions aren't dictated by approval. You stand tall because you choose to, because it aligns with who you are, and because you understand that validation from others is a luxury, not a requirement. That realization left everyone who tried to scrutinize or manipulate you quietly, uncomfortably aware that they could never replicate or diminish the strength you carry on your own. Number 11. They realized you see patterns long before others recognize the plot. One of the most unsettling discoveries the investigation revealed was how instinctively perceptive you are. Witnesses repeatedly confirmed that you notice connections, motives, and intentions long before anyone else even suspects they exist. While most people react to events after they've unfolded, you anticipate them, understand them, and position yourself accordingly. That ability isn't luck. It's a combination of keen observation, emotional intelligence, and a mind that naturally dissects complexity. It's the kind of awareness that leaves people around you, including those who tried to manipulate or deceive, quietly unnerved. The investigators assumed they could stage situations, mislead people, and test your responses without consequence. What they didn't account for was that you had already seen the underlying patterns, recognized the moves before they were made, and understood the intentions behind them. Witnesses described scenarios where people thought they were orchestrating events to control outcomes, only to realize that you were already several steps ahead, not reacting impulsively, but strategically. That foresight isn't obvious at first glance, which makes it even more intimidating. By the time they understood what was happening, you had already turned their own plans into evidence of your composure and insight. They came searching for inconsistencies, for mistakes, for missteps that could be exploited. Instead, the investigation revealed that your perception functions like a radar, detecting subtle shifts and patterns that others dismiss or miss entirely. Witnesses consistently reported being impressed and quietly intimidated by how early you identified motives, connected dots, and acted decisively. That kind of insight makes you untouchable in social dynamics and impossible to manipulate. By the conclusion of the investigation, the truth was clear. Your mind operates on a level where you see the story before it's written. You don't just respond to situations. You understand them, anticipate them, and adjust with precision. That foresight unsettled everyone who thought they could control, predict, or outmaneuver you. Your ability to recognize patterns isn't just remarkable, it's disarming, strategic, and entirely beyond their reach. Number 12. They found out you don't respond emotionally, you respond structurally. The investigation revealed something that left everyone involved quietly uneasy. Your reactions are not driven by emotion, they are driven by logic, structure, and precision. Witnesses described situations where most people would have panicked, argued, or lashed out under pressure. You didn't. Instead, you assessed the situation, organized your thoughts, and responded in a way that resolved the issue or protected your position without unnecessary chaos. That kind of composure is rare because most people allow their emotions to dictate their behavior, creating openings for manipulation and conflict. You, however, operate differently. Your approach is calculated, deliberate, and effective. They assumed they could provoke or destabilize you with lies, intimidation, or chaos, but every attempt failed. Witnesses consistently reported that even when surrounded by confusion or tension, you maintained a structural mindset. You don't overreact. You don't get drawn into meaningless disputes. You analyze, categorize, and respond in a way that not only neutralizes the problem, but often exposes weaknesses in others' strategies. That kind of response isn't just efficient. It's unsettling to anyone who depends on emotional reactions to control situations. Every account confirmed the same observation. Your decisions under pressure aren't impulsive or reactive. They are strategic. Witnesses noted that when challenges arose, you didn't get swept up in the moment. Instead, you restructured the scenario, redirected energy where it mattered, and took action that others could not predict. That makes you untouchable in environments built on manipulation, drama, or instability, because your responses are guided by systems and outcomes, not moods or provocation. By the end of the investigation, it was clear. Your approach isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about prioritizing structure and foresight over reaction. You don't let chaos dictate your behavior, you reorganize it. That revelation left everyone involved quietly shaken because it exposed how fundamentally unassailable you are. While others are caught in cycles of emotional response, you operate on a level that's methodical, precise, and impossible to exploit. Your power lies not in confrontation or anger, it lies in the unshakable structure of your mind. Number 13. They learned your kindness wasn't naivety, it was the test they failed. One of the most revealing truths from the investigation was how your generosity and patience were consistently misunderstood. Witnesses repeatedly emphasized that you gave people space, second chances, and the benefit of doubt, not because you were naive or weak, but because you operate on a level of discernment few possess. Your kindness wasn't blind, it was deliberate, measured, and revealing. Every interaction, every act of patience was like a quiet test, a way to observe character and intentions. Those who expected to manipulate, deceive, or take advantage of you failed every single time, and the investigation made that painfully clear. They thought your generosity could be exploited, that your patience would be mistaken for vulnerability. What they discovered instead was a structure in your behavior that exposed them. Witnesses described instances where people attempted to push boundaries, misrepresent themselves, or bend the truth, and every single attempt revealed more about their character than it ever did about yours. Your kindness acted as a mirror. It reflected intentions, honesty, and values back onto those who approached you. That realization was unsettling for anyone who assumed they could gain advantage over you, because it proved that nothing was hidden from your perception. The investigation highlighted a repeated pattern. Those who mistook your patience for weakness inevitably revealed their true nature. You didn't retaliate or scold unnecessarily, but your responses, or lack thereof, communicated the truth clearly. Witnesses noted that people who failed your unspoken tests often ended up exposing themselves completely, leaving no room for doubt. Your kindness wasn't casual. It was calculated in a way that allowed truth to rise to the surface while leaving your integrity untouched. By the end of the investigation, the conclusion was undeniable. Your generosity and patience weren't naivety, and they weren't accidental. They were tools that illuminated reality, revealed deception, and measured character. The people who tried to exploit you failed, and that failure became evident to everyone involved. Your kindness isn't a weakness. It's an instrument of clarity, strategy, and unshakable awareness that left observers, manipulators, and even witnesses quietly in awe. Number 14. They realized the truth that broke them the most. Your character was the same story everywhere they checked. The investigation reached a point that left everyone quietly stunned. No matter who they spoke to, what records they reviewed, or which corners of your life they examined, the story never changed. Witness after witness described the same unwavering truth. Your integrity, your consistency, and your authenticity remained intact in every situation. They expected contradictions, inconsistencies, or moments that could be twisted into scandal. What they found instead was an unbroken pattern of honesty, discipline, and moral clarity that could not be disputed. That realization was quietly devastating for them because it stripped away every expectation they had about controlling the narrative. They assumed they could catch you off guard, find evidence of hypocrisy, or expose hidden flaws. Every step of the investigation, however, revealed the opposite. Friends, colleagues, acquaintances, and even casual observers confirmed the same story. You are who you present yourself to be consistently in every setting. Witnesses described a level of alignment between words and actions that left no gaps for misinterpretation or exploitation. That level of consistency isn't just rare, it's unsettling to anyone who depends on manipulation, gossip, or deception to maintain control over perception. The pattern they discovered was undeniable. Your honesty wasn't situational. Your patience wasn't conditional. Your integrity wasn't selective. Every part of your life, every relationship, and every decision reflected the same fundamental principles. That realization forced them to confront something they hadn't anticipated. The problem was never you. You didn't need to defend yourself, explain yourself, or justify your actions, because your life already spoke louder than any attempt they made to rewrite your story. By the end of the investigation, it was clear the true power they failed to recognize isn't in what you say, it's in the unshakable consistency of who you are. Your character couldn't be manipulated, altered, or discredited because it exists independently of perception, rumor, or scrutiny. That truth broke them more than any confrontation could because it revealed a reality they could neither challenge nor control. You are exactly who you have always been, and the world had to acknowledge it. The truth that unfolded from this investigation is more than just a story of scrutiny. It's a revelation of the rare kind of strength, clarity, and integrity that exists when someone refuses to be defined by others. Every witness, every account, every observation pointed to the same undeniable conclusion. You are a person whose life cannot be manipulated, whose character cannot be twisted, and whose principles cannot be compromised. They expected contradictions, weaknesses, and openings. What they found instead was unwavering consistency, strategic silence, unshakable composure, and a level of foresight that left them exposed in ways they could never anticipate. From the way you handle pressure with precision, to the way your boundaries reflect lifelong principles rather than reactions, every aspect of your life stood as evidence of a truth too powerful to deny. Your independence doesn't require validation, your silence doesn't signal weakness, and your kindness isn't naivety. It's a quiet strength that exposes deception and measures character. You don't need crowds to stand tall, nor do you need external approval to guide your actions. Your perception sees the patterns before the plot unfolds. Your responses are structural rather than emotional, and your integrity remains perfectly aligned, no matter the situation. Every corner of your life reflects the same story, a story of someone unshakable, unassailable, and completely in command of their own path. The people who tried to manipulate, deceive, or test you ultimately revealed more about themselves than about you. The investigation didn't find flaws. It revealed a pattern of excellence that cannot be disputed, a life lived with intentionality, wisdom, and clarity that leaves observers in awe. This is the kind of revelation that shakes assumptions, disrupts narratives, and forces everyone involved to acknowledge one undeniable truth. Your value is inherent, your character is consistent, and your life cannot be undermined by external forces. If this video gave you the clarity, insight, or inspiration to recognize your own unshakable strength, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Like this video to show your support. Comment below with your thoughts or experiences and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Your awareness and action are part of the journey. Don't keep this truth to yourself. God bless you.